and welcome to another episode of the Diz Explorers podcast, where each week we explore the different avenues of the great Disney universe. This week is extra special. It is our 60th episode, which I feel like I'm making a bigger deal about than I did our 50th, because I think I forgot it was our 50th when we recorded it. So now that I'm back to numbering stuff in the right order, this is the big 60, and the second awesome part of this is we finally have our first guest on. And our first guest is none other than Rick Webster. On Twitter, you may know him as Captain Nemo 86. So we've been trying to get Rick on for a little while because we wanted originally to have him come on and speak, kind of co-host with Jessica on touring Disneyland Park for a day. And when we were scheduling him to do that, it just happened to be while the D23 Expo was going on, and he mentioned to me that, hey, I'm going to this thing for 3 days. And I kind of jokingly said to him, I was like, oh, great, take notes, and we'll have you on Monday. And he was like, yeah, I can totally do that. And I was like, well, alrighty then that's what we're doing. So, and here we are. So, Rick, we'd like to welcome you to the Diz Explorers podcast. Thank you for being our first guest, and extra special thank you for not telling me where to go and how to get there when I asked you about taking notes and coming on our podcast to talk about this crazy-ass expo that they do every 2 years. For people who don't know, the D23 Expo is something they've been doing for, I don't know how long, but they do it every other year out in Anaheim, and it seems
Since 2009.
2009, there you go. And I know they do small fan events all over the country in different cities here, there, and in between, and this is the big one. And this year, the one that happened 2 years ago, the major announcements were the Star Wars and the Pandora expansions, which we know have Pandora is online, Star Wars is in the midst of being online. So this year's huge news was the Parks and Resorts panels, I believe, is what people are most interested about, because especially this year with all the Epcot news and more Star Wars and Toy Story stuff being confirmed. So that was what everybody was wanting to hear about. I'm just going to turn it over to Rick and let him talk about kind of whichever ones he feels were the most interesting. And so I know the Parks and Resorts is up there, but there was some news about movies and what's coming out, I believe, both in animation and in live action. So we'll touch on as much as we can before we all have dry mouth from talking too much. So Rick, I'm just going to turn it over to you. Let us have it.
Well, thank you guys again very much for inviting me. It's really an honor to be here with you guys. And as I said earlier, happy birthday to our wonderful Disneyland, 62 years old today.
Yeah.
This was my second expo. I'm a lifelong Disney fan. My mom had me at Disneyland when she was 8 months pregnant with me, so she says I love Disney because I was listening through the wall and said, oh, I like what's going on out there. So this expo was wonderful. One thing I wish they would do is focus more on the movement of people, the lines and everything. But I do have to say the panels and things, especially because I attended the majority of the panels in the archive stages and a couple in stage 28 and the expo hall. The panels and presentations were fantastic. The guests that were there were amazing and fantastic pieces of Disney history, legends, Disney legends. I ran into Floyd Norman just, walking down a hall, and there he stood.
Wow.
I'm going to fangirl on that one. I've talked to him before. I've gotten to interview him. He is amazing.
He is a gentle, not just a gentleman, but he is a gentleman, a humble man. I got to talk with him at when they were getting the documentary and Animated Life ready.
Right.
There an honor for him. You probably heard about it. It was like May ago or something, May of 2016. He just was so personable. He's a treasure, truly a Disney treasure.
Absolutely.
As RJ said earlier, so it's 3 days of various panels, and then there's a huge show floor downstairs where they have different live events and they have, just a bunch of exhibits that you can look at. But my favorite, because I love the history, is going to these amazing panels. So I'd mentioned to you guys earlier, I went to the product panel, which I went in looking for the history, the Mickey Mouse watches and the Lionel trains and those types of things to hear about them. And then they also talked about the newer product that they're releasing and clothing lines and all that stuff, which was all very interesting. They also talked about the new face of the Disney stores that will be coming out. They're launching the first one, I believe, this weekend out in Northridge, California, which was actually the store where when I was a Disney store cast member, that's where I was interviewed, at that same store. And I'm happy to say that they're bringing back a new Disney store, I understand, to the Century City Mall in Los Angeles, which is the store that I originally worked at for the Disney company.
Cool.
The first main panel that I went to was one that was called Walking with Giants, a virtual visit to Walt Disney's Hyperion Studio. And you guys know, I'm sure, the history and about the Hyperion Studio and how now that sacred ground where they developed Snow White is now the the location of a Gelson's store and shopping center.
Yeah.
And fortunately, some of the buildings that were on the Hyperion site, specifically the bungalow, got moved over to the studio. So that building remains used today as like a conference room. There's, just as a side note, there's a lot of amazing sites right in that immediate area, Los Feliz and Burbank and Glendale area, that you can see if you go on the Bob Gurr History Trail bus tour, which I did last October. Jess, have you ever done that one?
No, but I'd like to. It sounds awesome.
It was really amazing, and it's a 6-hour tour with Bob Gurr himself. You actually walk to all these different locations. They get the bus as close as possible, and then Bob talks to you about it, and including the D23 headquarters. And if you're there early enough, they get you onto the lot, at least the front part of the lot, to look around and examine the executive building with the 7 dwarves holding up the roof. That's a really interesting tour for anybody if you get a chance to do it, including Walt's barn out in Los Feliz. So what was amazing about this panel was the fact it was just the one gentleman, Hans Perk, who's actually I believe a Norwegian or maybe he's from Denmark. He's an animator. He had his own studio. He talked about the Hyperion Studios that existed from 1926 to 1940. And what he did, amazingly, was he took a series of photos. There weren't a ton of them, but original photos with Disney employees sitting at the desks and throughout the Hyperion. And he created a CGI Hyperion.
Wow.
So it was really cool because you'd see his CGI of, like, let's say the entrance to the studios, and then it would morph into the some original footage of the employees leaving at the end of the day. So the way he did it was just really brilliantly done.
Wow, that's nuts, man. That's nuts how they can do that stuff.
Pretty amazing. I mean, literally walking you through the entire facility. It was fantastic. And then he was tying stories into it about the Hyperion and showing you where the Alice comedies were filmed on this makeshift stage in the back, and just the stories that man was able to tell were wonderful. The only downfall to it was that he was a little on the dry side, and you're in a dark room, and there was a little bit of an issue with that, but overall, just a fantastic presentation. The next one that we went to that day was one of the biggies, which was the Pirates of the Caribbean 50 Years of Swashbuckling Adventures in Disney Park.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
And that was Marty Sklar, Tony Baxter, Kim Irvine, who you know is the daughter of Leota Toombs and the daughter-in-law of Richard Irvine. And then also Orlando Ferrante, who is a Disney legend and a former Imagineering executive. And then 2 other executives from WDI, Nancy Ceruto and Luke Mayrand. And they just did this fantastic panel. I'm sorry I don't remember his name, but there's a gentleman who works hand in hand with Jerry Bruckheimer. He was the lead on the panel. and he was asking all the questions, and this was just phenomenal. Hearing all these legends talk about their experiences of working with Walt and working with Marc Davis. They showed a bunch of these fantastic old photographs. Some of them are ones that we've probably all seen. Others were ones that we have not seen. One of the other, they talked about, I loved hearing Tony Baxter talk about the experience of when they were building Pirates of the Caribbean in what's now called Disneyland Paris. My wife and I and Ninth Rook from the Who Knew podcast, we've known him for years, we were at the grand opening of Euro Disney in 1992.
Wow.
Even at that time, their pirates compared to ours, they were so advanced technology-wise that it was amazing. But to hear Tony Baxter talking about why they switched things around, decided to do the skeletons at the end as opposed to in the beginning like ours, and just all these different little discussions. And apparently they already do have in place, they were the first ones to implement the AA figures where they're actually sword fighting against each other.
Oh, right, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. So just that whole panel was absolutely wonderful, hearing them talk about their experiences working with Pirates of the Caribbean. As you guys know, with the changes coming to Pirates, as far as Take a Wench for a Bride and bringing on some women pirates, what was really interesting to hear and see was that Marc Davis had originally talked about and drawn various sketches of women pirates in Pirates of the Caribbean. In fact, one of the scenes that he had drawn, and I'll get into that a little more later, but one of the scenes that he had drawn, for those of you familiar with our pirates here in California, you come around after the second drop and there's the three pirates on the beach. His original sketch and concept art had two female pirates in that scene.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'll share all this stuff with you guys, if you, whatever you want to do with it, post it or whatever.
Okay, yeah, cool.
The Pirates presentation was excellent, as was the archives exhibit that I was talking to you earlier, RJ.
Yep.
Pirates exhibit was phenomenal. I didn't ever actively think about how many times pirates showed up throughout Disney history. And it was an amazing amalgam of all of the different, everything from Mickey Mouse and the Silly Symphony, King Neptune, all the way through having, all the way through Pirates of the Caribbean, the most recent release, but everything in between, and they had a bunch of the different old artwork. They had some of the old AAs, like the original dog sitting with the keys in his mouth, but they had the entire AA there so that you could actually see how it functions.
Wow.
It wasn't moving, but you could see the machinery.
Right.
I think I sent you, RJ, the picture of the pirate that used to be up on top of the one of the overcrossings over one of the bridges.
Yes. Yep.
The original. And for those of you guys who remember those incredible coins that we, I know they had them in Disney World as well. Retro Disney World did a podcast about this.
Yep.
And they had the machines there, one machine there, and samples of the coins that you could look at.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Those things were cool. I really wish I'd gotten those when I was a kid.
I'm in the midst of cleaning out my garage, and I'm going through and finding all my old Disney stuff. A couple of weeks ago, I found a 1957 Tom Sawyer's Island map.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my gosh.
I found my sister and brother's old phonograph albums of Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier, and the Mouseketeers album.
Nice. Yeah, I have some of those.
One other super quick story. I came across an old card from the 50s that was a Christmas card from your newspaper boy back in the day, when the newspaper boy would give every person he delivered to a little Christmas card. You open it up, it says something like, Happy Holidays from your paper boy. It's signed Kevin Corcoran. I looked it up, and I was born and raised in Santa Monica. And Kevin Corcoran from Toby Tyler Moochie.
Okay.
He was born in Santa Monica, California, and I want to say around 49. So, and I actually did ask somebody in the archives at D23, and they directed me where to go and check it out. But it's possible that Moochie was my mom and dad's paperboy in the 50s.
Oh, wow.
You never know what you're going to find.
No, that's for sure.
Jumping forward, outside of D23, they had some really great vehicles. They had they had Cinderella's carriage, and they had the sand speeder?
Oh,
that
from Star Wars?
Yes, from Star Wars.
Yeah, the speeder bikes, yeah.
Yes, they had that. They had Mater out front. They had Lola from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., an old T-Bird, and they had the Ghost Riders. I think it's a Challenger. I believe so. Let's see. Okay, so the next panel after that was on Saturday morning. Probably one of my favorites was Marc Davis Goes to WED. And this panel was run by Pete Docter and Chris Merritt.
Oh, wow.
I mean, we just were...
It's like it's A-team after A-team of panelists, man.
That's exactly it. They talked about Marc Davis. They showed different clips of interviews with him, and they showed a ton of different photographs that they said had never been shown to anybody before. They are in the process of compiling a book. As you probably know, Chris Merritt has done a couple of different books like Knott's Preserved and Pacific Ocean Park, which was a park out here in the 40s to 60s in Los Angeles. They're in the process of creating a new book between the two of them, so that's an amazing book. They had some photos up of the Mark Twain in dock when there wasn't a dock there yet and it's just dirt. The castle when it was still just a series of, from the top up it was developed, but from the bottom down there were parts of it that were still just wood and framing.
Wow.
Wow.
I'll share that out with you. They talked about all the different vignettes and ideas that Marc Davis had come up with for the Jungle Cruise, and how some of them got dropped because there's one scene where he wanted to have basically a parrot at the top of the whole plant and a number of alligators around the plant trying to get to the bird, but they felt that it was too reminiscent of the native uprising, so they left it out. There was supposed to be an area with elephant bones and stuff, and he even wanted to include a man-eating plant.
Okay.
And they have the sketches he made, and in fact they showed us the model, picture of the model, and you can see where they actually in the working model they implemented the man-eating plant. They talked about an area where he had originally wanted to put a series of these giant frogs, and I guess something happened with the frogs and they took them out. But if you go on the Jungle Cruise in Walt Disney World, he's not sure if it's still there or not, but for the longest time you still heard all these frogs croaking, but there was no visual to go with the audio. Huh. So really, really great stuff. Old WDI pictures, Walt sitting down and looking at these sketches, and even Walt right smack down in the middle of the model for It's a Small World to get an idea of what it would be like once you were on the attraction. So that pretty much... Oh, okay. One of the other interesting things I found in this panel was they were talking about the Tiki Room, which is one of my favorites.
Yep.
And they showed some old photos of Raleigh Crump, who created the tikis and he did the sculpting.
Yes.
So there's an old picture of him out back, sculpting it's Maui, the god of time here in our show. They were talking about how originally the figurines, the AAs across the top of the room that are banging the drums.
Yes.
Originally, those were Marc Davis drew those as monkeys, but by the time they got to Raleigh Crump, he stylized them, took the tail off the monkeys and put them more in a seated position, and that's what you see today is Raleigh Crump's variation of Marc Davis's original sketchings.
which is much better if you ask me.
Completely agree. For Haunted Mansion fans also like me, a big thing they talked about that was absolutely fascinating. They were talking about when Marc Davis was working on the Tiki Room, and there are some pictures of him working on some of those gods that go along the top of the room. And Chris Merritt said, but when we were looking at the pictures, there was something in the background on this one picture. So in Photoshop, they enlarged it and tried to enhance it as much as possible. It's a figure of a ghost in the background. They figured out that it is actually a ghost. It's kind of like our Hatbox Ghost situation out here. They had developed sketches for a ghost that would go around and add squeaks to the Haunted Mansion doors.
Huh, really?
Yeah. So she was built, and you see her in the background of this photo, with Marc Davis in the photo, but they never actually put her in. So the big question on everybody's mind was, well, are we going to be looking at, a Hatbox Ghost situation where now that they've discovered it, are they going to put her in? So who knows, but, that's where they announced that that's what they found. Then they talked more about Marc Davis and his work on pirates. And what I was mentioning to RJ earlier is, well, to all of you, there are actually women that he had integrated into some of his original sketches that he wanted to include. I'm trying to find the names of them. I'm not finding them at the moment, but there were, let's see, is that it? Mary Reed and Alice Bonny.
Okay.
You're familiar with the names, RJ?
Well, Bonny was there was an actual female pirate. I believe it was Anne Bonny. But so if they were doing a take on that, then that's pretty cool. That's it's somewhat historically correct, which I know the ride is not, but at least it's a similar last name. Mary Reed sounds familiar to me also. I don't know if maybe because I've heard it before to what you're referring to, or
she was another female pirate.
Yeah, I thought so too. Yeah. There was quite a few, honestly.
Yeah, and the particular sketch that I'm looking at right now, it looks like it's a pencil and ink sketch, has them on sitting on the beach, all surrounding a treasure chest, and the gag is, and as we all know with Marc Davis, he was able to convey the whole scene with just one image. You don't question, how does this scene work out? So you see all these pirates sitting around with one doubloon or one piece of jewelry, while the two female pirates are holding gobs and handfuls of the booty that they collected. So just seeing these sketches was fantastic. But what was interesting, as I mentioned earlier, the beach scene for us that has the three pirate skeletons originally did include, according to his sketch, the two female pirates.
Wow.
They showed some of the life renderings where they actually had a live person recreating Lafitte on the pirate ship. They've got some pictures of the when they were actually working on the Take a Wench for a Bride scene, where it's not complete yet, but they're working on the discs that used to control the movement of the AAs. So really, really interesting stuff. And in fact, this scene, they told us you could tell that Pirates was not quite ready to launch yet, because while all the human AAs were done, all the animals were just cardboard cutouts, just placeholders. So that was kind of fun to see. And then there's a series of photographs. They had mocked up the boat ride itself out in, I guess, in the Burbank lot. And these are actually pictures of Walt Disney, Marc Davis, Claude Coates, and some of the other guys, Richard Irvine, actually riding the boats and going down the flume. Yeah, it was just kind of, the stuff they were showing us was, amazing to see.
Yeah, I'll bet.
They kind of closed with talking about this, there's two things. They talked about they were going to do a chicken farm idea that sounds to me very similar to what we had at Knott's Berry Farm, which was Sam and Sadie's Haunted Shack, if anybody remembers that. And you would be going to visit, this was going to be in Fort Wilderness. It's called the Fort Wilderness Funhouse Concept from 1976. And a man and his wife supposedly were the owners of this chicken farm, and they had passed away. But as you would go through it, it was all the elements of those, the spot and those crazy mystery locations that you see across the country.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they proposed it in '76, but it never actually went any further. But it had some really interesting concepts in it. And then on that, they also talked about with Marc Davis coming up with a whole new idea for our primeval world of the dinosaurs, and also the Grand Canyon. He wanted to change it into a Kachina type of experience, if you will. But the music that he proposed for it, they actually ended up using in Primeval World Realm of the Dinosaurs. But to see these different sketches and some other things that he proposed was just fascinating. One of the ones that I loved, and I'll share this with you guys, is the how Marc Davis would think through any given scene. He would try to think of a number of different ways to present it. So they showed the whole series of the girl on a wire, Parasol Girl.
Mm-hmm.
It started with a woman standing on a chair, and then he changed it to her standing on a fountain, and then they changed it to her standing over an upside down fountain. And so over this series of 6 different panels, he finally came up with the final concept, which was her standing on the wire with a parasol with the gator underneath her.
Wow. Yeah, to see the progression of that stuff is pretty cool.
Yes, absolutely. So more of this stuff I'll just, I'll share with you guys in terms of the images, but just some of this artwork and the concepts were fantastic. After that, I saw The Hidden Art of Disney, a behind-the-scenes look at They Drew as They Please. That's a book series by, if you're familiar with Dieter Getz, or Ghez, Ghez. He's an author and a historian. He's developing a 6-book series, and I think he's done the first 2 and working on the 3rd one. But he had actually found some really amazing stuff. I believe he actually went to Alice Davis's house and looked through all these different, all through the rooms of her house, and looked in trunks and looked in, in boxes and everything, and found this amazing artwork. And a lot of that is what's going to come out in this book.
Nice.
The next one was, this one was really sweet. Walt, Kay, and Marceline, a very big small town story. And they basically traced Walt Disney's love of the town of Marceline, and talked about how he'd come to the opening of the pool, and he had, how he wanted the Midgetopia to be sent there and set up, and how the Disney family had a lifelong relationship with the Mallins family in Marceline. Kay Mallins is now the executive director of the Walt Disney Hometown Museum, and she's responsible for really getting this thing up and going, and she's just an amazing person, and she got emotional a few times, but to hear the stories coming out of her about her experiences with the Disney family, and you guys probably heard the one about when Walt was going to go back for the dedication, we don't have a hotel that has air conditioning, and we don't have any nice place for him to stay. So
right.
They stayed with the Mallins family, and all these other families let them borrow furniture because they had a new house but old furniture. So it was really, really, really sweet. Next was one that was called Disney and Pixar Did That, Advertisements and Animated Commercials. And they were basically talking about all these different commercials over the years and how Disney is linked to them, like Post Toasties and Jell-O. The whole thing of, you're familiar with Smokey the Bear?
Yeah.
Originally they were using Bambi, and I guess it lasted for a year, and then they had to use Smokey the Bear after that. But it was really great to see how many different things Disney did that were related directly to the advertisements and commercials. And when they talked about the part where Disney used to make some of these crests for the military,
yeah,
surprised to see that they actually made one for the Nautilus submarine that is an atom around a what looks like the Nautilus from 20,000 Leagues, that kind of also looks like a shark because it has an eye where the big windows are, and then a row of teeth below.
Okay. I think I've seen that somewhere.
Seen that one? I'd never seen that one before.
Because it sounds, what you're describing, it sounds familiar. Like I know the stuff they did with the military with Donald Duck and the films they made, and I have that DVD set, the Treasury set that has all that stuff on it and all that. I vaguely remember hearing or seeing something about that symbol you just described, and the Bambi thing as well too. I've never seen them, but I do remember hearing somewhere about that, with Bambi having something to do with like the forest fire thing and PSA type advertisements.
That's exactly right. And then there's some that we're all familiar with, like Peter Pan peanut butter and Donald Duck orange juice and those.
Yes.
It was great to see all these things, and I was amazed at how many different automobile ads that they were involved with like the Hudson Hornet. You know, I'm also a big fan of the movie Cars, so and then there was a variation of Jose. No, it wasn't Jose. It was one of the three Caballeros that they actually, I believe, they started as a different character and then evolved into the Caballeros character, or maybe it was the opposite way. But they also talked about new characters that they developed just that were not Disney to begin with. They developed these brand new characters that, like Bucky Beaver and stuff like that. And then they got into, that was all Disney, and then they got into Pixar, like the Drink Box and Trident and Gummy Lifesavers commercials.
Okay.
So all of that stuff, let's say. And then that evening ended with A Kiss Goodnight, which is actually a book that Richard Sherman and Floyd Norman are developing. Towards the end of the panel, because it was Richard Sherman, Floyd Norman, and Adrianne Brown Norman, Floyd's wife, then Juliana Hanson came out and actually sang with Richard Sherman. They did Feed the Birds, A Kiss Goodnight, and Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Wow. That's pretty cool. And you said that perfectly, Rick. Because I know I can't.
Well, thank you for that. And then RJ, I told you earlier about the Pirates exhibit was fantastic.
Of course it was.
Traced it all the way. I'm getting down to my next piece here. Oh, there was a great panel called Inspiring Women of Imagineering, which was 8 current-day Imagineers and how they got there. And it was really, I see why they called it Inspiring Women, because they talked about how they got there from they came from all different directions. One woman, literally, the business she worked for was across the street. They were closing down and moving to Texas. She crossed the street over to WDI, and she got a job in accounting and worked her way up from accounting to become an Imagineer and a show producer.
Wow.
Really good stuff with that. The next one was Magic in the Details, how Disney historical collections continue to inspire. And that one was really interesting because they showed how Disney, the archivists, had to pull all of the stuff together for things like the making of Saving Mr. Banks. Where did all this information come from? Where did all the, how did they make sure that everything was accurate? The archives were a big help on doing all of that stuff. So that one was a fun one to watch, especially when they talked about, and this will play better when I send you pictures, but when they talk about the digitization process, what was absolutely fascinating to watch is they've taken the original pencil sketches that were later turned into the actual cells and painted and everything. Mm-hmm. But they went back and they're digitizing every single line art drawing and then sequencing them so you can see how the animator originally intended it to look. How much weight did he give to each line? How did they make the subtle movements and everything? And they actually played some of them for us. So it was really fun to see how it's an amazing process. It's painstaking because they're literally going frame by frame to ensure that these are accurately scanned and rendered.
Wow, but that's fascinating.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that. And what they would do is show us a segment, and then they'd show a little segment of what the completed, what we actually saw in Robin Hood, but then you'd see the scene in just the pencil line drawings. It was
listening to you explain that and that they had a panel on it, I think is fantastic, because I think Disney fans, young and old, of the movies or anything, need to understand and how that process works and how that's how the films were made. And it makes me even sadder hearing that they don't do any of that at MGM anymore, which I know that part of the part, and I know I'm getting off the topic, but it sucks, because when they had all that, and they used to have the animation tour with Walter Cronkite and Robin Williams, and the little film they did showing how they animated and how they did the storyboards, to the sound effects, to the voice characterizations and everything else, I don't understand how they couldn't have brought it up to speed to the digital world, like you were just explaining, Rick, and have that as an exhibit instead of, I mean, the launch bay is great and all, and I love Star Wars, but I 100 times would have rather watched and seen that. And that's probably because I'm in the vast minority, and that's probably why there's a launch bay there and not still where you can go draw Disney characters. But it just blows my mind that you can only see something like that at a special event that not a lot of people go to get and see, because, I don't know, that's just so fascinating to me, and you got to know the history of it to appreciate what they're doing today. So no better way to do it than show, like, how Robin Hood was drawn in the 70s to now they're taking these original drawings and they're painstakingly, as you said, frame by frame, because that's how they drew them, digitizing them so they can show you the same talent of the artists back then. So I don't know. That's just my take on it.
And they brought out the big guns for this one, because they had the manager of research at the Animation Research Library, the director of music publishing and Disney concerts. That was a whole other thing that went into a whole other area of music I won't even go into right now. But
yeah.
A lead archivist and curator for the WD archives. And then this girl was just brilliant on the digitization process. And what they were saying is they want to show the animators nowadays who are like at Pixar and Walt Disney Animation, who are doing all of this CGI. They want to show them, look at how the original animators did this by hand and use squash and stretch on all these characters, and how much, when they drew a line, it was done for a specific reason, and they want to use it as a teaching tool. I wish, like you just said, I really wish they would put this somewhere where people could have access to seeing it, because it was an amazing panel to watch. The next one that was really, really awesome, guys, was Sleeping Beauty Castle Walkthrough, celebrating 60 years of Walt Disney's most charming tableau.
Oh!
Was that the Duchess I heard?
Yep.
Yes, lucky guess.
And guess who presented this one? Tony Baxter and Chris Merritt.
Wow.
Oh my God.
You may know that the most recent, it's been redone a couple of different times. The update before the current one, they turned them mainly into kind of like Barbie doll type characters, if you recall that, Jess.
Yeah.
But Chris Merritt was responsible for creating the new version, and they were trying to go back as much as possible to the original.
Really?
So, yes. And there were things in there that I'd never heard of. And in fact, they started off by showing us more of those photos I was telling you about, like the castle being built. And, on the Fantasyland side, there's a little terrace out there. That used to be part of it, that you could actually walk out on the terrace from the castle.
What?
Yes.
Are you joking?
Really?
Swear to God. And why wasn't I around then?
Wow.
Too young.
Okay, new bucket list item. Writing that down.
Guys, let me tell you. And so, as you know, Ivan Durrell worked on Sleeping Beauty. Just his art is absolutely incredible. And they wanted him to do the layouts and the backgrounds and everything for the castle, and because it was contemporaneous, and originally it wasn't being developed as Sleeping Beauty Castle, it was just the castle, And Walt's the one that said, well, let's tie in the castle to the movie that's coming out.
Oh.
Yeah. that one was a little bit of a shocker too. Yeah. So there's some beautiful pictures of Walt standing with all of this incredible Ivan Earl artwork behind him, and they showed quite a bit of it. And Walt talking with Marc Davis and Ivan Earl, and these having meetings about it. And they also did schematics, which you guys will see, with the actual walkthrough and the scenes that were in them. When they show you guys the incredible force perspective that, think about this, when this thing was originally developed, like right around 1957, the walkthrough, the incredible forced perspective they had to put on these little models. So you're standing in the castle looking into a window, and it's maybe a pie-shaped wedge that goes back 4 feet, but you need to make people think that they're looking across the entire castle. Or
right, yeah.
Just amazing how they were able to do all this, without computers to tell them the ratios to do this.
Yeah.
Just fascinating. Let's see, what's his name? Bob Gurr developed something that he called the Pixie Wheel, which was built for Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather to kind of fly around above Aurora's cradle. And they actually showed you the mechanics behind that and behind the Maleficent's Raven. I don't remember his name at the moment.
Diablo.
Yes, that's right. Thank you. So looking at all this stuff, and so there was this one point where you would walk out onto this like terrace area of the castle outside, and it was supposed to be as if you were looking down at the courtyard with all the people falling asleep. Okay? Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely amazing.
Oh, man.
This was funny, guys. Okay. For those of you familiar, there's one part when you're walking through the hall where upstairs in the castle, where you hear the sounds of the goblins walking back and forth, and then they pop up and scare you. So what they had originally developed was these goblins that would be, you would look through the keyhole in these giant doors, but what they had set up was there was like a maquette of a goblin, but right in the middle where the eyes would be was a mirror. So when your eye was looking through the keyhole, it would reflect back on you your own eye, and when you would blink, it would blink.
Holy crap.
Yes. Freaky looking, let me tell you. So they took a picture of this of the maquette and brought it up to Harriet Burns, and she goes, "Oh yeah, I remember working on that and painting it." So just fascinating, guys, the way they did all of this, and the way they reestablished it, and the way they were able to now, when Chris Merritt redid this a couple of years ago, how they were able to rematch the original colors that Ivan Earl used. And that, quite honestly, that was also fascinating, because I'm trying to remember if it was in this presentation or in the other one, Magic is in the Details. They showed how they archive a piece of artwork and the incredible painstaking they go through to photograph a piece and to set the lighting just exactly right. And they actually use a camera that would equate to what Ansel Adams would have used when taking his, like a 5x7, so one of the old style cameras. The way they do this process is absolutely amazing, and they need to make sure that they match up all the colors so that if somebody is looking at this piece of artwork, that the colors match the original. And maybe just because I'm a geek, I don't know, but I love these technology things.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, really, really amazing. Then we moved into a fun one. There's only 2 left, and then that's the end of the D23 that flew by. 3 days flew by in a wink. They had a really fun one called Pop Disney 6 Degrees of Separation. Are you guys all familiar with the whole idea of 6 degrees of separation?
Yeah.
Okay. So think of it as kind of like a Disney version in a way of a pop-up video.
Okay.
And these two guys, now one of the great parts of this was announcing the two presenters was Bill Rogers, the voice of Disneyland.
Okay.
Starts with, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, please welcome to the archive stage, Justin Arthur and Brett Iwan. So, I mean, it's the iconic voice that we all recognize. So these two guys get up there, and they were a hoot because they were bantering back and forth. But what they basically did was they started with talking about Indiana Jones. Okay, where did the idea for Indiana Jones come from? And they looked back at an old Uncle Scrooge comic book where Uncle Scrooge, Donald, and the nephews have to go down into this creepy cavern, and they're trying to get this idol down in the bottom, of this cavern. But in the meantime, the Beagle Boys get down there and they steal it. You guys remember the Beagle Boys?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what it shows is as they are trying to escape from this cavern, as soon as they pulled this idol off the top of its stand, its pillar, all of a sudden the entire temple starts to shake and quake, starts to come down around them, and as they're running down this corridor, what comes after them but a giant boulder rolling out.
Oh, wow.
So they're showing these frames of the comic book, and then they played that exact scene from Indiana Jones. And it was so funny because the comic book and the scene in Indiana Jones both end with them being captured by the natives. So they go from there, and I wish I could tell you all of the different pathways they took to get through the characters, but they said, okay, he was in this movie, and so he was also in Star Wars. In Star Wars was also this person, and they also played in this. So it was one of those, kind of like 6 degrees of separation.
Right.
Awesome. Here's something I had no idea about. Maybe you guys know. Do you remember the scene in Star Wars where C-3PO is walking across, is it the desert in Tatooine?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. You remember that dinosaur laying in the sand behind him?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody remember a movie called One of Our Dinosaurs is Missing?
No.
No, that I don't.
Never heard of that.
Peter Ustinov was in that movie, and it was literally about a dinosaur that was stolen from a museum. I remember it as a kid. I loved that movie. And so it was called One of Our Dinosaurs is Missing. It just so happened that they filmed that movie, One of Our Dinosaurs, in the same exact London studios where they were filming Star Wars.
Oh.
So they pulled this dinosaur from that, and it showed up in Star Wars.
Oh, funny.
So they, yeah.
That's cool.
And then they talked through a bunch of different things. Like from there, they said, well, Peter Ustinov was also Blackbeard, but his voice was also in something else.
Right.
And then they said, and he was in. So then they linked it to Paul McCartney, and then they linked Paul McCartney to John Lennon, and they said, and John Lennon, how does John Lennon link to Walt Disney World? Well, he was staying at the Poly when he signed works to break up the Beatles.
Yep.
So just imagine this all the way through, including like Pee Wee Herman, Dolly Parton singing 9 to 5 on stage with Mickey, with Minnie, Daisy, Snow White.
Yeah.
Just taking it all the way forward, and it was just really amazing the way they did it. So that was Pop Disney 6 Degrees of Separation. And guys, it ended with the Legends of Walt Disney Imagineering. John Stamos, we're all familiar with.
Yep.
He was the host. Oh, that was one other one. They used him in Pop Disney because they talked about the Grand Floridian and how the Beach Boys built Kokomo. So the hosts, John Stamos was the host, and he was talking to Tony Baxter and Marty Sklar. asking them all about all of the other people that they considered the amazing Imagineers, and asking them to talk about each one of them, like Blaine Gibson as a sculptor and all things like that. And the last one was Wayne Jackson, who actually received his 2017 Disney Legend Award this year.
Cool.
But it was just wonderful to hear the stories coming out of Tony Baxter and Marty Sklar. And Tony Baxter shared his Nautilus collection with everybody, showed a picture of it. And just to hear these guys talking about these amazing legends, and then, and to see Wayne Jackson was presented with an additional special award. It was a beautiful, beautiful bronze castle of, I believe it was Tokyo Disneyland, thanking him for all of his years of service, because he was instrumental in working on Tokyo Disneyland and Tokyo Disney Sea.
Wow.
So that was the very last panel yesterday. And just like I said, all throughout D23, amazing things to look at. They had brought they brought the Combine from Walt's barn. That originally the Combine was on the Disneyland Railroad. Tons and tons of booths and things to look at. It really was an amazing experience, and I hope and I pray that next time around you guys can all be here to share it, because it really is a wonderful experience.
Wow. Now, that's great. That's a lot of stuff. I mean, I had no idea that they had that many different panels. Now, those panels, they were all back to back to back. Are they on the same stage or the same area? Like, what's the logistics of trying to get to those different ones?
Okay. Well, let's start a little bit with outside. It takes up the entire Anaheim Convention Center, which is off of Catella across the street from DCA.
Okay.
The lineup goes from the front door of the convention center all up and down this giant mall area where all the security is set up, and then snakes all the way down past the entire convention center, and then does zigzags back and forth. I mean, literally, it went, if anybody's familiar with where West Street is, on Saturday, the entire line went as far as West Street. I mean, you're talking...
Are you kidding me?
I am not kidding you. Dead serious. Friday, my wife and my daughter and myself waited for about an hour and a half to get in, and they only had a few security stations going. And then Saturday and Sunday, when I got in line, I was in front of the convention center on Catella, and it took, again, about an hour and 15, hour and a half to get in, get through security, and then get in the door into the convention center.
Wow.
You walk into the convention center, and there are escalators leading up to the second and third floors. If you walk straight in, it's this huge exhibition area, and it's broken into like vendors in one area that are non-Disney related, and then they have an area that's called Friends of Disney, where Disney must have licensing and various agreements with them, and then the area is specifically Disney. Also,
Gotcha.
Within this giant area, there are 3 stores. There's Mickey's of Glendale, the Disney store, and the Disney Dream store. The only one we made it into this time was the Disney Dream store. 2 years ago, I made it into all 3 stores, but I also spent like an hour and a half to 2 hours in line for each one.
Man.
Yeah. It was about a half an hour wait, and I got my wife and daughter into the Disney Dream store, and they had some stuff for Epcot's 35th anniversary. I got one of their t-shirts for Epcot, and I absolutely love it. Again, I'll share pictures with you guys of the stuff that we got in there. They had a Pirates t-shirt my wife fell in love with, and it's not often she falls in love with something that's not like a Mickey or Minnie t-shirt, and she just fell for the shirt immediately. Yeah, it was, and their D23 Expo shirt this year was really cool with Mickey, and it says Disney Fanatic on the back.
Okay.
Some buttons, all sorts of... That store, I think, was the right one to be in, and I think... Did I send you this, RJ? The pictures of the 2 new pieces by Shag of Pirates of the Caribbean.
You did, and those were floating around because I've seen a couple other people put them on Twitter. Yeah, those were pretty cool. I probably would have dropped the money for those if I was there.
I bought one each of the postcards because as soon as you bounce up to the framed stuff, you're getting into the hundreds. So
oh yeah, definitely.
And the big framed pieces, or actually unframed rather, on canvas where they they're just wrapped on canvas.
Right.
Those were
thousands.
But I think we picked the right store. If we were going to pick one store to go in, that was the right one. And they do give you a pass holder discount.
Oh, nice.
So, that worked out really well.
Absolutely.
So all of these things are in that bottom area. There's a great big stage area where they have live performances throughout the day. They have trivia contests. They have performances. Guys, the costumes that people wear are absolutely stunning.
Yeah, the cosplay is pretty ridiculous. It's like a Comic-Con level of stuff.
Yeah, I saw the one with the working Thunder Mountain Railroad on the dress.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I saw some
cool.
pretty wacky stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see from Moana to Kai, and I don't remember the other one's name. But
Yes.
We saw them.
I saw that.
They were phenomenal.
I liked the sleeping monk from Spaceship Earth. I thought that was great. And the princesses doing aerobics outside. That was awesome, too.
And the Sanderson sisters, now I honestly couldn't tell you if they're the same ones that were there 2 years ago, but the ones I saw 2 years ago, they actually had their little act worked out, and you'd swear you were watching the movie.
Oh, wow.
That's
awesome.
There was an awesome Hatbox Ghost and his bride that were outside. I got a picture of them. And what was so funny is a friend who does a bunch of media marketing was there. She sent a text to my wife saying, "Tell Rick to keep an eye out for the Hatbox Ghost. It's a really great costume." So my wife texts it to me, and I said, "Oh, darn it, I didn't get a chance to see him. Maybe tomorrow." And I walked out the front doors of the expo, and they're standing right there.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
It was awesome. So there's so much to see. Like I said, Van Eaton Galleries. There's a bunch of Disney partners. There's a whole area that's like Disney housewares and stuff. Like they had a whole table set up, a barbecue kind of outdoor eating type thing set up, where everything was Star Wars.
Oh, wow.
Mickey and Minnie. They had this great setup that my kid would have loved, but we didn't know it was there. At least I didn't when they were there Friday. You got to jump into Uncle Scrooge's money vault.
Oh, nice.
So they had this setup where you would go climb upstairs, and you're standing like in the door of the vault.
Yep.
And say 1, 2, 3, go, and you would jump, and it's a ball pit. Okay.
Yeah.
But you would jump, and they would grab your picture as you were in the air.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And I'm like, oh, I wish, if I'd have known. You walk around there, and you see some really amazing stuff. Tons of zoom stuff, things like that. What the hardest part, guys, is the balance, which for me, I didn't make it into the big parks presentation. I didn't make it into the big movies presentation. But everything that I saw was absolutely incredible to me. The way they time this stuff, because they use these rooms over and over again. So there's like sometimes a half an hour in between. And so you can get a stage pass for things. But basically what you're doing is getting in line to get a ticket to get in the line upstairs.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You let in for like a fast pass.
Right.
So I'll be honest with you. I got one fast pass because my wife, daughter, and I wanted to be together and make sure we saw this one panel together, the Hyperion one. But other than that, I just went standby on every other one because I was like, there was only one that I didn't get into and I really wanted to see, which was the Voices of the Disney Parks.
Okay.
That's the only one that they hit capacity. And they said, sorry, nobody else can come in. But every other panel, even if I was way back in the standby line, I still got in.
Nice. Well, I think a majority is because I'd say I don't know. I've never been to one of these events, and I know they draw huge numbers, but I gotta figure better than half, probably close to 3/4 of the people are trying to get into the big ones. At least those are the people that are camping out at 4 a.m. the day before, laying on the ground. Which I can't believe that they allow that to even happen, but that's another issue.
Guys, we hung out with Todd Horan from Jiminy Crickets. We got together with him on Thursday evening, and we went and had dinner. We walked around downtown Disney. Oh, that's another quick story. We ate at La Brea Bakery. We finished dinner, and the four of us were getting up from the table and start to come around a corner, and I just stopped, and I saw back of a head that I recognized. I turned around and looked at Todd, and he mouths, Richard Sherman. Richard Sherman was sitting there.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
And
Cool.
I could feel my wife going, don't ask to take a picture. Don't ask to take a picture. Because they're sitting there eating. But all I did was I looked at him and I said, sir, I have to tell you, you are absolutely amazing. I love what you do. Thank you so much for all you've given to all of us. Or something to that effect.
Right.
Smiled, and he said, I don't even remember exactly if he said, you're welcome or something like that. And I said, or he said to me, I'll see you at D23. I said, yes, sir, I'll be there. And his wife looked up and gave him a nice smile and said, thank you very much, or something to that effect. But we didn't ask for photos or anything, but they were just so sweet. And it was just, it was that special moment right there. But Todd, the reason I was mentioning that is because Todd did get up and go over at 3 a.m. on Friday and Saturday.
Wow.
He tweeted out about it quite a bit. I'm proud of him because I'll tell you, I sure couldn't do it. I needed to be in a bed. We stayed at Knott's, 10 minutes away, and I drove over in the mornings. But, he did it, and he got into the big panels that he wanted to see.
Well, if that's all you're worried about, then I guess that's, but still, that's a long day. That's crazy. I don't know that I would, with social media and technology the way it is today, it's almost like you're there anyway. There were so many live streams and stuff going on, and information comes out instantly now. So it's, I guess it's always nice to hear it in person because you're hearing exactly what they're saying. But there's just, it was impossible not to know what was going on, I think.
Yeah, right. Well, the other lucky thing for Todd is that in the parks panel, I guess, I don't know exactly how it was done, but he ended up getting a wristband. He had to go and wait in another line, but he was one of the people that got chosen to get a wristband to go and see the opening nights of Fantasmic.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I heard that was because people got denied. I don't remember if it was the live action panel or what animation, but one of the panels, they let in people that weren't waiting in line. So people that waited in line got stranded outside, and they gave those people premier seating to Fantasmic, is what I heard.
That was huge. That we started hearing about that around, like you'd be walking by people, and go, oh my God, did you hear what happened to the people downstairs? Because they said that Disney may have miscounted on the number of people or something, but I never heard a full story on it. Todd was very lucky, and he was able to go and see Fantasmic, but you had to have, if you had annual passports or you had a ticket to be in Disneyland, then you could go. But if you didn't have a ticket to get in, if you couldn't be in Disneyland anyway, you couldn't have gone to the Fantasmic opening.
Oh, I got you.
Guys, it was just a really great experience. I told my wife afterwards, I said, I'm all ready for 2019. She's like, I think you need to wait a little bit.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I really hope that you guys can come next year. And there was, what was fun too was there was there was one point where we were coming out of the Pirates panel, and I was talking with Todd, and then my friend Frank from the Who Knew podcast. He and I went to high school together. So we were standing around talking, and here comes Dave from Nostalgia walking up. So it was just like, wow, look at all these podcasting people. And we were standing next to the Diz booth. So it was just like this, wow, really? All of this in one spot. But it was really neat because you got to talk to some of the nicest people and share stories and share ideas and talk about, well, what's your favorite park? What's your favorite ride, your movie, your character? the people that are there, I think, are there because I believe, honestly, for the most part, people are there because they love Disney and they love how it makes them feel, and that's why they want to be a part of it. I salute Disney for doing this. Yeah, it needs some work in certain areas, but overall, guys, it really is an amazing experience.
Awesome. I'm glad you had a good time, and I'm actually I wasn't sure, like before I knew you had went, I didn't know which panels you went and saw and didn't see, so I'm not glad that you didn't get into the parks and the animation ones. It seems like that wasn't your goal anyway, but I'm glad that you came on and we talked about the other aspects of it, because all you ever hear about is the park stuff and the movie stuff, because that's what, like I said before, 85% of the people, that's all they really care about. They want to know what they're going to see new and what movies are going to come out. And like I said also, that information comes out as soon as it's coming out of these people's mouths on the panel. Somebody's tweeting it, periscoping it, live streaming it, or whatever they can get away with. So, I feel like that information has been flooded the past 3 days. So I'm glad to have a different approach to it and see the other things, the more historical things and the more, for lack of a better word, geeky things, which I know all of us on this podcast is, besides going to the theme parks and watching the movies, is like the true core of our obsession, if you would, is some of the history and the how, at least for me, how it was done and how they did it and things of that nature. So it's awesome, man. Thank you. I appreciate taking good notes and remembering all that you did, because
well, I'm happy to do it. And if you guys have any other questions or anything, because we need to just figure out how I should get you these pictures and stuff, because then you may have some other questions when you see some of the pictures. But I was just happy to be able to be a part of it, and I really appreciate you guys inviting me to come and talk about it. My big thing is, I said this the last time and I say it again this time, you just got to take a look at these sleeper panels, because people may think, that's not going to be interesting. And they end up, in my opinion, being the best panels.
Well, absolutely, because they get more in depth. I mean, we'll, as a podcast, probably discuss all the news that came out for the parks things and the movie things next week or the week after. But that stuff is cut and dry. They're building this, we're going to add this here, this is coming here, and details to follow. And they don't have to elaborate on a damn thing, because number one, they don't have the details. Number two, they don't care enough to, they don't want to tell you everything that's going on, because then, what would they talk about in another 2 years? So the ones that you went and saw, I feel, are more in depth and more informative, and probably, like you just said, a hell of a lot more interesting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The other stuff, they're just throwing facts at you, more or less, or this is what's happening, and that's it. Anybody can, read a list of movies off and say this is what's coming out for the next 10 years, and this is the order it's coming out. I mean, it's cool, it's exciting to hear, but after that, it's done.
Right, exactly. And so I think that they put a lot of effort into doing these panels and really focusing on the demographic is the Disney nerd, the people that want to hear about Walt's 9 Old Men, about Imagineering, about how did they create this and why, and what was going through Walt's head. Why did he take Blaine Gibson from being an animator and stick him in to be a sculptor? And it just all this amazing stuff that, I really geek out on, and many, and so many of us geek out on. I think they really do it well by having these panels. So I hope they continue to do it, because I will always go for those types of panels.
Yeah, definitely. I hope myself to make it out there in any form or fashion. We would, my wife and I have discussed it, going out. We've never been to Disneyland, so it would be a all-encompassing type trip. Hit Disneyland for a week or whatever it is, and then maybe go to the expo for a day or two and see how it is. Just kind of waiting for our children to get a little older, just so it's not like we can go out there and get a babysitter. I mean, I'm sure you could, but just so they can appreciate some of it as well. And so it's not just, hey, we're going to, Disneyland and let's go on rides and see shows all day. I try to incorporate some of the history and the how-to as well, as much as their young minds can handle, at least. So, just so they have gained the same appreciation that I have over the years. I mean, I don't force it down on them. I certainly enjoy bestowing what I've learned over the years upon others.
You sound like me, RJ. I'm always that with my daughter, but thank goodness she's a big Disney fan, and we also love going to Knott's. We're annual pass holders for Knott's as well, but my daughter, she's like, Dad, because we'll be walking by and you can see a speaker and, hanging from a lamppost or something. Or, well, at Disneyland, it would be hidden in a rock, or it would be hidden as part of a flower basket, or you could see a light bulb through the fixture, the actual bulb. I say, well, baby, at Disney, this would actually be, they would have frosted glass around it, so you're not looking at the bulb itself. You could just see the light. She's like, oh, Lord, Dad.
I know. Yeah, I know.
Hey, I think we're teaching them right.
That's it. All right, well, I think that's going to be a good spot to wrap this episode up. Before we head out, Rick, you want to give out any of your social media, how people can find you or follow you?
Sure. I'm just Captain Nemo 86 on Twitter. That's the only one I do. I just love sharing Disney fun history and stuff like that.
Excellent. Yeah, so go give Rick a follow. He's out there, and he is West Coast out in California with Jessica, so he is very Disneyland heavy in his tweets and things he put out, which is fine, which is great, because we need more of that, at least on the East Coast, because I feel like Walt Disney World kind of takes over a lot of things, and I know.
Yeah, it does.
I know we try. I know we try as much as we can on here to spread the wealth.
Oh yeah, for sure. But on Twitter, Disney World definitely dominates.
Yeah, it seems that way.
I hope I get a chance for my family to meet Jess's family sometime down at Disneyland.
Oh, that would be so fun. We have to figure that out.
That would be terrific. And happy to share, guys. Anything that I come across, I kind of throw it out there. And if you guys have any other questions about when I send you the pictures, by all means, just let me know, and I'll go back and look more in the notes.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're thank Rick for coming on, and as I said at the beginning of the episode, we will definitely have Rick back for our touring Disneyland Park in a day. I would say series, but we did one park, the Magic Kingdom, 3 months ago and haven't done any other since. So we will get back to this as soon as news and new stuff stops coming out.
Yeah.
They need to stop
don't hold your
announcing
breath.
things. I know. Well, August should be a lull month, so maybe we'll get some stuff then.
Yeah, last time I said that, everything exploded. So
I know. You're right. We hope you enjoyed all that. We definitely thank Rick again for coming on.
If you're going to be in the Indianapolis area on August 26th,
we're going to wrap this episode
we're
up.
having our 10th anniversary Indy Disney meet, and it's going to be a blast. We've doubled the space this year. It's held at the fairgrounds right here in Hamilton County in Noblesville, Indiana, which is on the northeast side of Indy. And we got all kinds of stuff, all kinds of people coming this year. Yeehaw Bob, which I don't know how many of you are familiar with him, but he does performances at Port Orleans Resort at the River Roost Lounge. We've got Herbie the Love Bug coming. Of course, our favorite people, the princesses from Frozen, the 501st Legion, which is a fan group that does Empire and Rebel costuming from Star Wars, will actually be here, and there's some of that in the video that I posted. It's a carry-in. Everybody brings food, and holy cow, we end up with a ton of it. Everything from savory to sweet. They usually have a machine set up doing Dole Whips. We have drawings and things like that, but all the money that we raise goes to Give Kids the World, which is the little community in Florida where basically Make-A-Wish takes their kids for kids that are, come down with cancer, and it's their Make-A-Wish to go to Disney World. So all the money we raise for that goes towards that charity. And we're also going to be doing a group podcast from there. There'll be several of us there. I know Mike Relman from Be Our Guest podcast is going to be there. He started coming last year. It'll be a really good time. So if you're in the area, and I'll be talking about it the next few podcasts up, probably even until that weekend. So they have a kids room with kids activities, and they always have character meet and greets in there, face painting. They'll have a DJ. At some point, they show a couple movies for the kids, and it's a good time. So come on out.
You can find us over at the DizExplorers.com on the World Wide Web, where on that website you can download this podcast. You can find links to all our other social media accounts. You can find the links to all of our troopers and all our social media accounts. And as far as downloading this podcast, you can find us on Podbean, Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, and also on YouTube for audio only.
Hey, RJ, can I give one more quick shout out?
Absolutely, go for it.
Thank you, sir. A fine gentleman who goes by Creepy Kingdom just put out a fan-based Haunted Mansion documentary. I went over D23 weekend. I went to the opening of Foolish Mortals, and it is just a terrific fan movie documentary about the Haunted Mansion. He's trying to get a lot of legs underneath it to take it around and have a lot of people see it. So if you hear it coming to your area or you have interest in it, look up Creepy Kingdom or Foolish Mortals on Twitter or all the other social media. He's all over the place.
Excellent. Thanks, Rick. Yeah, some of those fan-made documentaries are pretty good. Pretty well done because there's a lot of passion behind them. And if they get footage in the parks, it's usually pretty good stuff. And it's... So, yeah, definitely. So it's good to spread the word on that stuff. I like seeing people do those independent projects, and I definitely try to back them up whenever I can, and at least get the word out so other people can check it out.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, anytime. So thank you, everybody, and we'll talk to everybody next time.